What if I told you I didn't set out to photograph leprechauns? I was actually looking for something haunted to happen. I was out in nature with my camera, wishing for an apparition, and one photo changed everything. This is the story of how I discovered the Faerie Realm and how you might photograph a leprechaun too, or a gremlin, or a gnome, or an elf, and why the who you photograph and the reason they're drawn to you truly matters. As I said, it started with a single photo, number 0880, taken at Effigy Mounds in Harpers Ferry, Iowa, a place of sacred earth and ancestral energy. I was going through the photos I'd taken that June day in 2016, looking for orbs, mists, anything paranormal. Using Photoshop to zoom in, I scanned each image carefully. I didn't see it at first, that figure, unmistakably a little being whom I've come to call the guard. Not a leprechaun, not a gnome, something else. And it had been watching. That discovery, that moment, changed the course of everything. Because of that one image, I was pulled back, not just to the moment, but through all the photographs I'd taken that day. What if I'd photographed more little people and just never saw them? So I returned to the beginning, to photo number 0873, the first of 118 photos I took that day, and I began the process of going through them with a fine-toothed comb, zooming in, looking closely, one by one. In the end, I found 24 photos with little people hidden within them. The first 14 photos went in consecutive order, each with one or more little beings somewhere inside. And in 4 of those, number 0875, number 0877, number 0881, and number 0883, I finally saw something familiar. Leprechauns. Real leprechauns, caught on my little red Samsung camera. And that's when everything changed. Because it was the leprechauns, those unmistakable faces, that made me realize I wasn't just photographing little people, I was photographing the Fae. These leprechauns all had a different look. Their faces, their clothing, even their expressions varied. But when I looked at them, I knew they were leprechauns. The first 4 from Effigy Mounds seemed to start a trend, because from that point on, leprechauns continued appearing in my photos, not just in that first series from Effigy Mounds, but across different locations and across the next almost 10 years. And just like those first ones, they always look a little different, but I always know they are leprechauns. A feeling of recognition. Sometimes it's in the face, sometimes the eyes, often the clothing. Many even wear a kind of hat, not always, but often, like a magician's top hat, only taller and in leprechaun green. I've photographed hundreds of fairies over the years, all sorts of species, but among the more well-known types, gnomes, gremlins, trolls, and so on, the leprechauns appear more than any other. In 2019, I chose one of these leprechauns to communicate with through dowsing. I wanted to give him the opportunity to share a message with us, in his own words, about luck, since that is what most people think of when they are presented with a leprechaun. The one I chose was the last of the 4 leprechauns from Effigy Mounds, and he gave his name as Golly. He was very entertaining, with a wonderful sense of humor, sharing a short story about how leprechauns came into being, so to speak, and offering his services in a very unique way should we need them. If you'd like to hear more from Golly, especially how to shift your own luck and energy, you can find the link for the video in the upper right corner and in the description box below. And if you're curious how I communicate with fairies through dowsing, intuitive typing, and even tarot, I'll be sharing more on that in an upcoming video. So, what does this all mean for you? Why should you try photographing a leprechaun or another species of fairy? Because this is not just my story, it can be your story too. When someone captures the same species of fairy over and over, a leprechaun, a gnome, a fairy, it's not random. There is meaning to it. For me, after finally noticing how many leprechauns were in my photos in so many different locations, I realized that they were reinforcing what I feel was their original message. You are photographing the fairy realm. Their return helped me to understand that I was still very much connected and that the fairies would come forward for me yet again in my photographs. So, to repeat, when someone captures the same species of fairy over and over again, it's not random. It is a message. The fairy realm is responding specifically to you. Your message may be very different to mine, and you can be sure that the fairy that appears to you is your guide, your protector, and may even be an energetic mirror. So what value is there in photographing fairies? It confirms your belief in the fairy realm, not because I said it exists, but because you experienced it. It awakens your inner sight, training you to slow down and see with more than your eyes. It reopens or adds to your connection to nature and the magic you may have forgotten. It shows you who is walking with you, who might have always been there. And it invites you into a relationship that is healing, offers valuable insight, and may even transform you in wonderful ways you never expected. For many, the first photograph is just the beginning. Here is how you can begin. 1. Go to a place you feel drawn to. A forest, a nature trail, a quiet park, your own backyard. Let your intuition guide you. Perhaps try to put yourself in the shoes of the fairies and imagine where you would like to spend your time if you were them, and go there. 2. Walk slowly and stay on the path. Tell the fairies that you would like to photograph them if they would allow it. Listen for twigs snapping, birds being extra noisy, sudden silence. Subtle clues. Don't send out force like a fairy just has to show itself in my photo. Instead, ask quietly, please show yourself in my photo. 3. Take pictures of what draws your attention. You don't have to see anything. If you feel drawn, take the photo. 4. Later, go through your photos. I use Photoshop and zoom into 200%. Then slowly scan the picture from left to right, moving up as needed. Find a way that works for you to see your photos larger. This will also depend on what you use for a camera. I could certainly use my phone for taking photos instead of my little red Samsung camera, but I'm not a fan of my phone camera. It doesn't zoom clearly enough. When I try, the photos almost look like they were taken underwater. Notice the things in your photos that don't seem to fit. Then look even deeper. You might find a fairy, you might not, but don't give up. It will happen for you, and that's where your journey with the fairy realm begins. Just a quick reminder, you may not photograph a leprechaun. You might photograph a gnome, a dryad, a sprite, an elemental, or another species of fairy you recognize as part of the fairy realm. Whatever it is, trust it. The fairy that shows up for you is likely connected to your energy, your story, your journey. But don't take that first appearance for granted. Go out and take photos again, in the same location or a different one. See if that fairy or another of the same species shows up for you again, as the leprechauns did for me. Then do it again and again. There will come a point when you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the fairy species that keeps appearing is your connection to the fairy realm. You don't need to believe in fairies the way I do, but if even a part of you is curious, willing to wonder, willing to look, then maybe this is an invitation from the fairies, using me as their messenger. Take your camera, head into nature, give it a shot. And if something or someone shows up in your photos, well, that could be the beginning of your own fairy journey. If something like this happens for you, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to tell your story in the comments below. Thanks for watching.